or dedicated path between the source and the destination. Therefore, they can directly transmit data between the two hosts, right? So you can directly transmit data from the source to the destination. You need not divide it into packets. All right. Okay. Um, Now let me start with the next part. Oh, somebody else started recording. Okay. So when I say to start the recording, then only I will start the recording. Okay. You need not start the recording. All right. So today we are going to start with the internet structure, the backbone of it. Okay. So when we say the backbone network, we generally say that, okay, this is nothing but a connection of or a network of interconnected routers and switches. Okay. So that's what we were looking at for the past few classes. We were just talking about it as global ISP or local ISP. Today we have a new part here, that is a content provider network or a data center network. Okay, and we are going to study what are these things. All right, so let's start with this. So when I'm saying that what is an ISP? ISP is nothing but a service provider which is providing you the internet. So that's why it is known as the internet service provider. Now your system gets connected to the access ISPs or access internet service providers. Why? Because it is giving you network access. Okay. So those network providers like your BSNL, Vodafone, etc., these will fall under the category of access ISPs. Okay. Now we know that when we are going to talk to somebody else, then irrespective of whatever access ISP they are using, they should be able to communicate with each other, right? So that is why these access ISPs must be connected with each other. Now, if you think about it, suppose there's an internet service provider like BSNL. So what happens? They will have their own interconnected routers for communication, right, between their own devices. Okay, so suppose I consider that, okay, whatever devices are there which are using BSNL, so they can communicate using these set of routers in this given area. Okay. Now, you also know that only BSNL to BSNL communication is not going to happen. There will be communication between BSNL and all other kind of networks that are possible. Okay. So then what you do? You generally connect it to some other router too. Okay. That is routers belonging to other ISPs. Right. So that is why they need to be interconnected. Okay. Okay, so this makes it what, that you have several access ISPs which are having their own set of routers, as well as they are connected to other access ISPs also. Okay, so you have a very complex network here. All right. So when I said in the last classes that in the back, I mean, when we are talking about the network, it is nothing but a connected graph. That's what makes this a connected graph. Okay, because everything has to be connected with each other. There has to be a path between any two source and destination. Okay. All right. So let's take a stepwise approach so that we can describe how it happens in the current internet structure that we have. All right. So we were talking about the internet structure as a network of networks. All right. So as I was telling that there are several access networks or access ISPs. Okay. So these small sets that you are looking at, yeah, these sets that you are looking at, they are all your access ISPs or access networks. Okay, so that means each one of these sets, they are having their own set of, their own set of connected network. Okay, now they are allowing the end systems like your mobile phones or your laptops to communicate with the internet. Okay, so your systems are connected with this access network. So when I'm saying that all these access networks also have to be connected with each other in order to, allow communication between any two access networks, so the graph becomes like this. Okay, if it's a connected graph, it will become like this. So now you can see that there are O of n square connections that are required, right? So you can understand that how many access networks will be there for the entire world, and then how many connections you are going to deal with. Okay, so this becomes totally unfeasible. So what do? You try to have a superset that basically allows the communication between these access networks. Okay, so how does that happen? So this is known as a global ISP, or it is also known as a tier 1 ISP. Okay, so what happens? So all these access networks, they basically are connected to this global ISP, which is a global internet service provider, and that has its own set of, connections made. Okay, so these are the set of routers that you can see that belong to the global ISP, and all these access networks are connected to these. Okay, so whenever there is a communication that has to happen between any two hosts belonging to any access network, the communication will go through this global ISP. Okay, so now imagine the situation that you are going to talk to somebody who is maybe you are in CS department and somebody else is there in the civil department. Perhaps the distance between you two is so close. Okay, if you see to it, but the communication that you want to make, that goes through such a big scenario. Okay, so that will basically increase the delay. That means you are sending this data up to this global ISP and then getting it back to your own friend who's just near to you. So that is not very convenient, right? It will increase the delay, and also it still increases the number of connections. The number of connections and the amount of data that is to be handled, that is still a lot higher. Okay, so further what we can do is we can further make it into a hierarchical way. Okay, so now instead of having only one global ISP, you can have several global ISPs. Okay, so you have ISP A, ISP B, ISP C, and they are basically handling the data that is coming through different access networks throughout the internet. Okay, now you will see that since now here the question is that we need to have a connected graph, right? So these ISPs also need to be connected with each other, right? So how do we connect them? We connect them through some gateway points, which are known as internet exchange point. Okay, these points will be called as internet exchange points. They are also known as points of presence, okay, or POPs. Now this is what the global ISP is. So that means it is a service provider that is providing service to everybody across different access ISPs. However, instead of having a single global ISP, there can be several ISPs, and they can communicate with each other with the help of internet exchange points. Now I was thinking that some questions may arise regarding, who are these ISPs, who do they answer to, and where are they, in which countries are they, do they belong to, etc. So now I'll give you names of certain companies like AT&T, NTT. They all belong to this global ISP. Okay, So these companies, they have their own, they also provide access networks, and they also act as global ISPs. Okay. All right. So these are certain peering links also, which are in between these ISPs. Okay. All right. Now, just because of the, just imagine that how huge this situation is. Okay, so just having global ISP also is cumbersome. All right, so we can have what is called as regional ISP. Okay, so the regional ISP is also known as the tier 2 ISP. Okay, so this is known as the customer of these tier 1 ISPs or global ISPs. Okay, so here the tier 1 ISP is the provider to the customer, which is the regional ISP. So any communication that is coming out from these access networks, it will go through these regional networks and then finally to the global network, global ISP if needed. All right. Now, what we have is the content provider network. Okay. Now, what is the content provider network or the data center network? All right. So content provider network or the data center network are those which have their own networks for exchange of information. When we have a big set of data centers and there is a lot of information that needs to be exchanged, so these organizations, they have their own network through which they can provide access directly to the users. They can provide access to the global and regional ISPs, and they will have their own network. Okay, so those networks are known as content provider networks, which sit along with the tier 1 ISPs, that is the global ISPs in the hierarchy. Okay, so some of the organizations which have content provider networks are Google, Microsoft, Akamai, etc. All right. So why do we need these content provider networks? Because instead of going through all this regional ISP, global ISP, and then connecting to the content provider network server and then giving back the information, if the content provider network can have any direct access to the hosts or the hosts access network, then they can directly provide that information. Anyways, they are having a set of interconnected data centers, so therefore they can try to give information to the access networks also. So that's what I was telling, that the content provider network sits along with the tier 1 ISPs. Okay, so this is what the diagram is showing you. All right, so this is sitting together with the tier 1 ISPs. You have the internet exchange points which connect them with the regional ISPs. Okay, now the regional ISPs will further be connected to the access ISP. Now remember, this in total, that is the internet in total, is a connected graph, right? So that means even though there is this regional ISP, there is a tier 1 ISP, there are access ISPs, they all will be connected together. There will be some link between them. Okay, it's not always that access ISP will go through the regional ISP then to the tier 1 ISP. As you can see that there is a link between the two, so there can be a link directly between the tier 1 ISP and the access ISP. As I was telling, that AT&T etc and NTT, they also provide access ISP networks, so that's how they are providing that, and they are also acting as global ISPs. And then you have the content provider network here, which can have direct connections with the access ISP, or it can have connections via the regional ISP. Okay. All right. Now we will get to the network's performance. All right. So when we were talking about in the last class, when we were talking about the fact that when there is a large number of packets that starts arriving into a router, then its queue will start filling up. Okay, and once that happens, there can be a scenario that we will have packet loss. All right. So when the queue starts filling up, there can be two ways in which packet loss can happen. One is that excuse me, just a second. Okay. So one is that once your queue is filled up, then whatever packets are arriving, they will be dropped. Okay. The other one that I was talking about was that if there is a packet that is having a deadline of its own, then the packet will have to be dropped. Okay. So these are the ways in which you can have packet loss at the routers. Okay. All right. So let's see what are the different kinds of delays that we can have. Okay. So we have already studied that if at all there is a data or there is a packet that needs to be transmitted, first thing that you need to consider is the transmission delay. That is, how much time does it require to move this packet, this particular packet, over to the medium. Okay. So if you want to move the packet to the medium, then the amount of time that you take is given by the size of the packet divided by the link capacity. Okay. So that will incur your transmission delay. Then the amount of time that a packet is waiting in the queue of the router until it gets the chance to transmit, that will be called as the queuing delay. That is the amount of time it spends in the router's buffer before getting transmitted. All right. Okay. So this I have already told that if the buffer is full, then the packets will be dropped. So now let us see what are the different delays. So there are four types of delays when we are trying to transmit a packet from a source to a destination. Okay. Let us see here. Why is this not coming? Just a second. Anyways, okay. So let us suppose that you are sending packets from source A and source B to this router, interconnected router, which will further send these packets over to the next router. Okay. Now, let us consider one of these packets. Let me consider the packet that is being transmitted through host A. Okay. So once it reaches the router, if you remember, when we were talking about in the first class, I think when we were first or second class, I think we were talking about that routing and forwarding as two tasks which are there associated to transmission of a packet through a router, right? So there are several such processings which are done on a packet once it reaches any device in the network. Okay, it can be a router, it can be a switch, it can be any other host also. Okay, so when there is a packet that is reaching reaching any node, I'll call, so any of the hosts in the network, I'll call them as nodes. Okay, any of the interconnected, because they form a connected graph and therefore they can be called as nodes. Okay, so whenever any packet reaches any node, then there will be some processing on it. So if it is a router, there will be like what a routing decision will be made. then a forwarding will be done. Okay, forwarding decision will be done, and there are several other tasks also which we will learn throughout this course, that what will be the processing that will happen on a packet once it reaches a host. So now that forms the nodal processing, and there is a delay that will be incurred, of course, when there is such processing happening over a packet. Okay, so once the packet reaches a particular node, there will be a nodal processing delay, or simply called as processing delay. Okay, so as you can see here, the deproc or deprocessing is representing the nodal processing delay. Now there are several tasks, as I was telling you, that are carried out once a packet reaches a router. So one is you're checking the bit errors, determining which is the output link, that is through routing and forwarding. And this delay is typically very less, as it is shown that it will be less than some microseconds too. So that is the type of delay that you are going to get. Then the next part is, once this processing is done, then it will enter into the queue. Okay, so whenever anything enters into the queue, it has to wait for all the others in front of that particular packet, all the other packets in front of that particular packet to first get scheduled or transmitted. So any packet that is reaching the router's buffer, that has to wait for its chance to get transmitted over the medium. Okay, so that delay, as I already told, is known as the queuing delay. All right, so this delay will be dependent upon that how many packets are actually arriving into the router, right? So that means if your network is much congested, then your queuing delay will be much higher as compared to a scenario when the network is less congested. Okay, so that is why it is written here that DQ or queuing delay depends on the congestion level of routers. All right, now we'll get to the next part, that is the transmission delay. So I have just told you what is the transmission delay. We don't need to describe further. So if you have a L-bit packet length and R is the link transmission rate, so then your transmission delay will be given by L by R. Now by this time, your packet, that is, if I consider this one coming from node A to the router, so this packet has now transmitted over to the medium. Okay, now what should be the next step? That is, this packet now moves from this end to the next end. Okay, that is the receiver. Okay, here it is this router. So this delay that is required for the packet to move from one end to the other over the medium, over the physical link that is there. Okay, if it's a wired link, then the physical wired link that you have, so the time required to move through that physical wired link, or if it's a wireless link, then what is the time to propagate over the medium, which is your air, and then reach the receiver. That will be known as the propagation delay. Okay, now propagation speed is given by this. Okay, it is near to the speed of light, which is 2 into 10 power 8 meters per second. Okay, so this is the propagation speed, and therefore the propagation delay is given by D by S, that is physical length, length of the, or distance between the physical distance between the two nodes, and then the propagation speed that is provided by your link. All right. Okay, now this is something very important that you need to consider, that transmission delay and propagation delay are two very different entities, and very different things actually affect these two. Okay, so that is why I am telling you so many times what is transmission delay and what is propagation delay. Okay, So again, I'll repeat, transmission delay is the delay that will be required for a packet to transmit over to the medium. It will depend on the transmission rate of the link, okay, and the size of the packet that you are trying to transmit. And propagation delay will not be dependent on the size of the packet. It will be dependent upon the distance between the two nodes through which the packet needs to be transmitted and the speed, the propagation speed. Okay. All right. Now we are going to take another look at the queuing delay. Okay. So suppose the arrival rate of packets is, average arrival rate of packets is A at a particular node. The packet length is L bits and you have a link bandwidth of R, or it's the transmission rate. Okay. So given this, how many packets are arriving? So that is L times of A, and you have service rate as R. Okay. So with this, if you divide the two, the ratio of the arrival rate of bits and the service rate of bits, that gives you the traffic intensity. That is, how much of traffic are you getting or receiving at the node's end. Okay. So please note that traffic intensity is not same as the packet arrival rate. Okay, people do this. I mean, people do make this mistake several times. So this is not correct. Traffic intensity basically will tell you that what is the arrival rate of bits at the host or at the node. Okay. All right. So now let's just have an analysis done. Okay. Now the traffic intensity, if it is equivalent to 0, that means your average queuing delay is small. Of course, because if less number of packets are arriving in your buffer, so therefore the queuing delay of course is going to be small. If your average queuing delay is, why it is like this? Anyways, all right. Now if your average traffic intensity is much greater than 1, then what happens? That means more work arriving is more than it can be serviced. Okay, so that means your average delay becomes too large to be for the packet to be served. Okay. If you have your traffic intensity equal to 1, then you will say that okay, we have your arrival rate of bits, I mean packets are arriving at a particular rate, and whatever rate they are arriving at, your link capacity is also having the same rate, and therefore it can be managed. Okay, so that is when you say that okay, the traffic intensity is equal to 1. Once it is greater than 1, in that case there is a question of congestion. Okay, so now when traffic intensity is, so this is in the x-axis you have traffic intensity, and the y-axis you have average queuing delay. So you can see that as traffic intensity is nearing to 1, okay, so in that case you can see how the average queuing delay is actually increasing. All right. So now if it becomes more than 1, then it will be too high. Okay. Now let's look at internet delays and routes. Okay, so how do we find out that what is the delay that is my network facing? Okay, can I even see that what is the delay my packets are facing when I'm transmitting it over the network? Okay, so since you have started your lab from today itself, so and your questions are already shared, so you can check this traceroute program. Okay, check out how to do this. Okay, and then you can check the traceroute program and find out that how much of delay your packets are actually facing when you are pinging to some other node, okay, or some other website, so web server. Yeah, now how does the traceroute program work? Okay, so what it does, it first sends 3 packets that will reach any router on the path towards the destination. Okay, so that is there is a time to live field value. Time to live field is nothing but, as I was telling, that there is a lifetime for each packet. Okay, so 3 probes if it is done, so the time to live field will be set to 3. Okay, so then it will keep decreasing, or you can think of it as like either the counter can be 1 to 3 or 3 to 1, whatever. And as whenever it reaches the time to live counter, then it is said that the packet has lost its lifetime. Okay, so now how did you check that how much of time did you take? So first 3 packets will reach the router on the path. So first router is this one, so there are 3 packets that are sent. Now the router is supposed to return the packet to the sender. Okay, now what will the sender do? Whatever packet it is receiving from the router, it will simply measure the time interval between the transmission time and the reply that it got from the router. Okay. So now similarly, when there is another router connected and you are further going on, so then again these 3 packets will be sent over to this router. Then again a reply message will come back and the time will be measured. Okay. Similarly, again, if this router, if the other router is also part of the transmission, then the packets will be transmitted to this third router also, and then again we will wait for the reply time. So similarly, if there is a transmission that goes on between this and this hosts, these 2 hosts with these 4 routers, so it will look, yeah, it will look something like this. Again, there will be a 3 probes here. All right, it is not given here, but again there will be 3 probes and you will find out that okay, this is the time that is required for my packets to reach the destination. So yeah, so if you want to do a trace route, so this was the trace route that was done to this particular web server. Okay, so you can find out, see, if you do a trace route to any particular web server now, you will get such a result. Okay, with these timestamps with that. Okay, so now see, you have 3 probe packets, or 3 yeah, these are called as probe packets. So these 3 probe packets, you can see the delay measurement that is given here. So these are the delay that was received from the router to the source. Okay, so like this you can see that for the probes that were made, you could see that for different IP addresses, so whatever nodes were there in between, you got the amount of delays for probing. Okay, so this is what your trace route will actually do. Okay. All right, so now see what's happening. What's being shown here is that as I was telling you that for first router you will get some, like here, yeah, for the first set of router, the nearest router, you got this much of delay. For the next set you got another set of delay. Okay, then you keep going on. Okay, so these are the transoceanic links where you are getting the maximum delays. Okay, so yeah, so then again there are, so now this is a question that is there, that why suddenly you see that there is a decrease in the delay. All right, once you are coming back, why suddenly there is a decrease in the delay? So that's also something to think of. Okay, so I will give you a hint that you are going from the source to the destination and then you are getting the probe back. Okay, so you have to check that why your delay is decreasing and then suddenly there is an increase in the delay. So what are the things that you are missing and why the delay is varying like this? Okay, now if you have these star marks, that means there is no response. Okay, so that means the router is not replying to you, so there must be some issue in the path. Okay, so you can visit this traceroute.org. Okay, this website, you will find out, if you can do a trace route ping to any other places where you can actually see that how much time it is taking for a packet to reach to some other country and then come back. So you can see that if you're interested. All right. So now let's check. Let's get back to our packet loss. So we know that our buffer has a finite capacity, right? Therefore, what we have is we do have queuing delay and we have packet losses associated with it. Okay. Now, if there is a packet loss, okay, so then what will happen? The lost packet can be transmitted again. Okay, either so that will be done only when the source will get to know that okay, there was a packet loss, so it will transmit that. Okay, or if it is not known to the source that the packet was lost, so then it will not be transmitted again and the packet will be lost forever. Okay, so these are the issues that can happen with packet loss. All right. So with all these transmission of data, then there is a lot of packet loss. Okay, when we are talking about performance of the network, one of the metrics that is very much important is throughput. Okay, we have talked about delay, that is one metric. Another is throughput. All right, because as a user, you will be concerned with how fast you are getting your information, and you will be concerned with that how much of information you are getting within a small amount of time. So that means the rate at which your bits are being sent from the sender to the receiver is very important, and that is known as the throughput that the network is going to give you. Okay, so throughput can be either instantaneous throughput or it can be average. So instantaneous, as you know, will be that at this point of time or at a given point of time, what is the rate at which you are getting the data. Okay, whereas the average throughput would be the rate over a given period of time. Right. So now you can imagine that when we are talking about throughput, it is basically dependent on the link capacity that is there between the two nodes or between any two nodes. Okay, so here we have link capacity of RS bits per second and RC bits per second between these two links. Okay, so this is a server and this is a client, so that is why it is given as RC bits per second and RS bits per second. This is just for simplicity. Okay. Now, let us assume that this communication link between the server and the router is having a lesser capacity, that is RS bits per second is less than RC bits per second. Okay, so in that case, how much maximum throughput will you get? So, okay, RS is less than RC. So what is the average end-to-end throughput? Any answers to this question?
RS.
RS, yes. So you will have the one that gives you the minimum link capacity. So that one will be the so that one will give you the average end-to-end throughput. Okay, so it is, so as it was given here, that it's like a fluid, a pipe that is transmitting fluid. Okay, so however that will behave, your communication links carrying your data signals, they will also behave in the same way. So now this is also the same thing, that if it happens the other way around, that is this link is having much higher capacity than this link, and also you will still get the amount of total throughput that you get at the end, that is limited by the link that has the lower capacity. Okay. All right. So now let us look at this scenario. So you have several servers here that have different capacities known as RS. There's a link in between that gives the capacity as R, and the client servers the client nodes, these are connected to this link R with a capacity of RC. Okay, so basically they are sharing this link with R bits per second. Okay, so the per connection end-to-end throughput in this case, so here we are assuming that there are 10 connections. Now the per connection end-to-end throughput will be given by minimum of RC, RS, R divided by 10. Okay. All right. So yeah. So it is written that in practice RC or RS is often the bottleneck. So that just means that your access connection from the client to the ISP's connection. So this is basically the ISP's connection, and again your access connection from the server to the ISP's connection. They are the ones which have the bottleneck most of the times. Okay, why they have the bottleneck, that you will understand when you will understand that how the congestion is happening, how there are so many packets which are actually traveling and they are sharing the same access link. So many hosts are sharing the same access link, which is essentially reducing the amount of throughput that each of the hosts get. All right, so due to all of these reasons and several others, we generally get a bottleneck at RS and RC. Okay. Now, when it comes to all of these things, one of the most hot topics that we have and we will always have is security, and recently we had this Pegasus thing also, right? So network security is actually one of the most important weapons that can be used. Okay, so it's no joke, it's actually real, and it's actually very uh, it's dangerous actually. Okay, so now we need to think about that how the adversaries who actually affect the computer network, who actually affect the transmission of data, and ultimately affect the communication or the privacy of the users. That's what we need to see. All right. So yes. So what do we need to think about? That how the bad guys can attack computer networks, how we can defend networks against attacks, and how to design architectures that are immune to attacks. Okay. So first thing is known as sniffing. All right, packet sniffing. So packet sniffing generally happens in all those mediums where broadcasting can be used. Okay, so what is broadcasting? That is, as I had mentioned earlier in one of my classes, that when there is one single node that is transmitting in such a way that all the nodes which are connected to it, or near to it, they will receive that information. Okay, all the nodes which are in its transmission range, they will receive that information. So wireless networks is one that provides such a communication, and Ethernet. Okay, Ethernet also provides such a connection. So packet sniffing is more prone to be done in such kind of networks, that is broadcast media. Okay, so let's see how this packet sniffing happens. So suppose there is, the so-called bad guy is here. So see, sniffing is nothing but intercepting packets which are going through the medium. Right. So now this is the bad guy which is here at C. Now what happens? It is also having a connection with this. So let us suppose that this is an Ethernet connection. All right. So these are all connected to each other through a wired connection. And now there is some packet that is being transmitted by source B to the particular through this particular router to server A. Okay, so you have a packet. So this is the packet. So as we know that every packet will have a set of information associated to it, which will basically represent as to where the packet is going to be delivered, what is the destination, what is the source of the packet, and all the other information that are relevant for its transmission. So that information is there in the packet's header part. So a packet will have a header part and a payload part. Okay, so the header part will contain all of this information, that is what's the source, what's the destination, etc. And the payload part will contain the actual data that is being transmitted. Okay, so now here you can see that source B is basically sending this packet over to the medium. Now this guy who's sitting in between, that is essentially intercepting this packet, or taking all the records of whatever information is being sent from B to A. All right. So whatever you do, if you are using your net banking and using your password on that, that can also be sniffed up by a hacker in between. Okay. So as you are using your Wireshark, I think as the first assignment, once you get a hang of it, you can also check the packet sniffer. Okay. So here in the Kuros and Ross book, you can find out at the end of this chapter, the first chapter that I am teaching, you will have a lab section there. Okay, so there is a lab section in each book after a particular chapter. So in that you will get as to how to use the packet sniffer in Wireshark. Okay, so if you are interested, you can actually take a look at that. All right, so fine. So in the next class, what we will do is we will start with all the other attacks. It's yeah, I don't have, yeah, the time is up for the class. So do we have any other questions?